Hello, my name is Lisa Laughman, and I am an emotional wellness consultant with the MSU Health for You program. And my role on campus is to try to provide employees with the opportunity to learn some skills that would help increase their emotional resilience and their psychological flexibility. Today's video toolkit episode is about psychological flexibility and helping ourselves be on a journey to go from being psychologically rigid to more psychologically flexible. Most people are more psychologically rigid than they intend to be, and it's partly the way that we've learned to keep ourselves safe and protected. This idea that we have to be prepared in advance for anything that occurs, and to try to make sure we know how we want things to turn out. And so sometimes when things don't turn out like we want them to, we can get really thrown by that. And if we think we need to have everything planned out a certain way, and then something happens that gets in the way of that, we can become really resistant. We spend a lot of time resisting what is. And so learning psychological flexibility skills can help us be able to be more relaxed when things don't go the way we want them to, and to access our creativity sooner, and then to come back with a response more quickly. One of our taglines here at Health for You is relax, reflect, respond, because we want to be more responsive than reactive. Psychological flexibility is a big piece of that learning. So today I'm going to introduce you to something called the psychological flexibility measure. And if you haven't already completed this, I'm going to ask you in just a minute to pause the video and open the link and complete this assessment. You'll notice on the diagram that it has 6 points, and on each of those points there's a sentence on the inside and a sentence on the outside. All I really want you to do is to read both of those sentences and to decide, like, currently which one of them is more representative of the way that you are on that measure. And so you would just circle the number on the slide, and then you do that each of the 6 times. You can feel free to add up those scores and total those scores. I'm also going to encourage you to write the date on that set of scores, just so that we're taking a snapshot in time of where you might be right now. And then I'm going to introduce you to some skills and suggest some reading that you might do on your own. And then at a later time, you might go back and redo this and see if there's any movement. But before we get into the teaching, I'd like you to pause now and go and complete that assessment. Okay, welcome back. I hope you were able to do that assessment and that you've got your answers locked in. Before going to a different slide, I just want to say why I'm so excited about this measurement tool that I found. I have been teaching psychological flexibility and emotional resilience classes here at MSU for the whole time I've been here, which is about 13 years. And at some point we started to want to talk about how do we measure change for people. And along that time I found this document, this measure, and I really like it. And one of the reasons why I really like it is the way that it's shaped. And the reason why that excites me so much is that it kind of fits with a metaphor that I've been using to talk about psychological flexibility for quite some time. And it's a weird metaphor, so you're going to think, wow, that's weird, and I'm going to say, yes, it is, but stay with me because I want you to understand what I'm talking about. I think that human beings operate a lot like a garden hose, and a garden hose is the vessel through which water flows from the spigot to whatever it is that needs watering. Similarly, I see human beings as the vessel through which energy flows, and that we're connected to a healthy source of life energy. Something's beating my heart, something's causing my lungs to respirate. I have the spark of life, and I have creativity flowing through me. And that when I'm relaxed psychologically and at ease, that energy, that creativity flows at full force. And I can bring that to whatever I direct that creativity towards. Just like I can direct the water from a garden hose at a garden, or I could wash my car or water the grass. I can direct my creativity at my parenting or a work problem or a relationship at any point in time, or the path I want to take driving home. So by design, how we operate best, our default setting is to be relaxed and have that creativity and energy flowing fully. But I always say that people understand the outdoor plumbing at their house better than they understand how they operate psychologically. Because if I was washing my car today and the water flow stopped, what would the first thought be for me? Probably. Most people would say there's a kink in the hose. And I ask, is that a problem? And most people say no. Some people say, well, if I'm already in a bad mood, it might be. But for the most part, it's not a problem. What do? You find the kink and you open up the flow and you go back to washing the car. But I always ask people, like, do you ever think it's the car that stops the flow? And then people usually laugh because that's kind of silly. That's not how it works. But when I get kinked up psychologically, I often think it's the things outside the circumstances I'm dealing with that are causing the kink. The test is causing anxiety. Public speaking makes me anxious. My kids might be driving me crazy. Our language betrays that we think this is true. He's pushing my buttons. She's on my last nerve. All of those things that sort of say that my upset, my kink, is created by something outside of myself. And so, what we're wanting to do is start to understand that what actually interrupts the flow of creativity and new thinking and new ideas is being stuck with a bunch of thoughts and having thoughts about those thoughts and then kind of getting kinked up about those thoughts. So the skill building around acceptance commitment theory, which is one of the theories I like to talk with people the most about, is really designed to help us notice when we're kinked up, help us move away from that, get back to flow, connect with what matters most to us, and then direct that energy specifically at that with those values in mind. So now looking back at this diagram, you can kind of see that it looks like a cross section perhaps of a hose. And if you were to take a pencil and on your diagram, draw a line isolating the two values that are on the right-hand side of your diagram, the value identification scale and the commitment and taking action scale. If you were to separate those, the way I think about this is that the four that would be remaining on the left side of the line are really about noticing that you're kinked up and relaxing the kink. And the two on the right-hand side of the line are really about what do I really most want to water, and am I committed in the watering practices? And so acceptance commitment theory goes through each of these skills and provides you with some new learning that can help you move towards the outside of the scale. So the numbers that you have, like the closer you are on each of these scales to the center of the diagram, the more you might be the more you might currently be psychologically rigid. So the goal would be that as you do learning, those scores would move out towards the outer ring of the diagram, thus creating more space for energy to flow through. And so if your numbers are all really low right now, that's not a big deal. I'm pretty sure that if I had taken this before I had learned all of the things that I now teach people, my numbers would have been like as low as they could be towards that center. Really, I felt like life was coming at me and it was creating my experience. I was very outside in oriented at the time, and therefore living both at the mercy of my circumstances and at the mercy of my thinking about those circumstances. Now, over time, I'm more psychologically flexible. I'm more able more often to respond to an upset with relaxed creativity than I am just a reactive upset. Still, sometimes my closest friends would tell you that I still get kinked up. And so always that's part of the human condition, but we want to be more able more often to acknowledge that something is what it is and then respond to it the way it makes most sense based on our values. So just again, psychological flexibility is the ability to be present in the present moment and respond to what's happening in a wise, value-guided manner. You don't need to have it all planned out in advance. And psychological flexibility is more possible because you start to really trust that a good idea is going to come to you. I was talking with a woman once, and she was an excellent planner. Like you could give her a set of conditions and ask her to make a plan, and she would come up with an awesome plan. But folks were having a difficult time working with her because she would come up with a great plan, and then she would be totally attached to the plan she created. And when something happened and made that plan no longer viable, she got rigid and still wanted her plan. This is my plan. I want to work with my plan. And I was asking her, like, it was curious to me because she was such a good planner. I was curious about why she would be so attached to a plan that was no longer viable when she had every capacity to take the new circumstances in and fairly quickly make a new awesome plan. And we were joking that she needed to have like an easy button, like at Office Max, I think it is. But instead of it saying easy, it would say plan ejection. And whenever she got a sense that she was attached to a plan that was no longer viable, all she would need to do is hit the button, release it, and then go back to her awesome planning ability and create a new plan. And she had a lot of great success with that, although some people thought that she something might be going on with her because she kept hitting the table. And in her mind, she was like just reminding herself to eject the plan. So she moved from being psychologically rigid to psychologically flexible, and her strength of being a great planner got enhanced because she got to her gifts more quickly. She didn't have to go through upset to get there. So psychological flexibility deeply respects new ideas rather than holding on to what you already know. Most psychological suffering is caused by resisting what is. And so one of the key take-home messages in this video is you really want to start to notice and witness how often you're resisting what is. Sometimes people resist unwanted personal experiences. I love that phrase. I think there are lots of times in the course of a week where I have some unwanted personal experience, like this thing is happening and I would prefer it not to. But guess what? It is happening. So whether it's an unwanted personal experience or not, it is what's happening. So we are funny. We try to control everything so as to avoid a future unwanted personal experience. We even spend a great deal of time ruminating over unwanted personal experiences that happened a long time ago. We also resist the ones that are happening right now. Like if I'm late for a meeting and stuck in traffic, I could really easily get into resisting the fact that I'm stuck in traffic. But no amount of resisting that I'm stuck in traffic is going to make me less stuck in traffic. If I drop the resistance, I might actually be able to have new creative ideas about how to be best prepared when I do show up, or even maybe a way I might alert people that I'm going to be late. But certainly I get better ideas once I drop the resistance. Most people have no idea how often they resist things as they move through a day. So I just want you to kind of start checking in with yourself and noticing how that works. What we're wanting to do, the two-sentence summary of acceptance commitment theory are, it is what it is, which a lot of people have that first sentence in their mind, well, you know, it is what it is. But that's not really very powerful by itself. It can kind of be like, you know, being resigned to something and not having any power about it. The second sentence is really powerful. Given that it is what it is, who do I want to be and how do I want to respond? In this moment, with my values, with my energy, what can we do to move this thing forward? It is what it is. Given that it is what it is, who do I want to be and how do I want to respond? Back to looking at this picture again, what's really cool about learning skills in these 6 areas is as you learn in one section, it tends to increase your learning in another section. So if we were to look at the diagram here, the self is context. That's really like the waking up the part of you that can, the one on the bottom, waking up the part of you that can witness what you're up to, can notice when you start to get caught up in a thought, can notice if you're resisting something. If you don't notice, you can't do anything about it. You're just stuck inside of it. And so as that one gets stronger, you start to get an ability to notice when you're fused with your thinking, where you and your thought are kind of like married together, and like you're just caught up in that thought. Like it's just a thought here, but now it's like what you're thinking. And the more you're able to witness that you're fused, the more you would be able to implement some diffusion strategies, which is the one that's on the lower left of your diagram. So as those two get moving, one of the ways you diffuse is to make connection with the present moment, to bring your psychological attention right now to the here and now, and let yourself relax back into a feeling of groundedness. That's the skill at the top. As you start to notice that you're fused and you get stronger at connecting with the present moment, all of these start to open up more. Acceptance is also called expansion. And that's when you like don't resist the feelings that you have. A lot of people don't like feeling difficult emotions, but difficult emotions are an inevitable part of life. And so getting better at moving through a difficult emotion helps us not get off of our path with our values just because something that we need to do to be lined up with our values is going to cause maybe the feeling of vulnerability or sadness or loss. So getting better at feeling the full range of emotions helps you be more lined up with your values and to do committed action. So as you learn all 6 of these skills, you will be increasing your overall psychological flexibility. I think of it like an aperture of a camera, like it just starts to open up, and it closes less often, so you're in full flow more often in more situations. It doesn't mean you won't kink up still, but you would be more able more often to like notice that, relax back out. So relax, reflect, respond. So the 6 core concepts are the observing self, which is waking up the part of you that is able to be aware of whatever you're thinking or feeling. I call it the witness. It's very common in mindfulness practice and meditation to like be strengthening your ability to witness yourself. Diffusion is detaching from the currently held thought. It's sort of, I call it the trombone slide. Like if I have a thought, it's out here, it's just a thought. But as I pull it in and attach to it, it becomes the only thought I can see. Diffusion is when you notice that you're attached to that and start creating some space by giving your attention to something in the here and now. That's where mindfulness fits into this process. Connecting fully with whatever's happening right here, right now, like, am I breathing? No, I wasn't. How am I sitting in my chair? I often encourage people to take a breath, and when they exhale, to become aware of all the sounds they can hear. And just keep breathing and dropping, letting their energy drop on the exhale, and just keep listening to the layers of sound that they might hear. Often people feel themselves drop back into a more relaxed place. Expansion is opening up and making room for all the feelings and sensations that it might make sense for a person to have, given that the situation is what it is. And so we live in a feel-good culture where, like, if we have a difficult emotions, we are encouraged to take a pill or numb this out or somehow define ourselves as like we're only healthy if we're happy. But expansion is really about learning how to be a human being that is not afraid of any emotion, that doesn't let any emotion deter them from their value-guided action. So expansion is really making space so a feeling can be felt, honored, and released, rather than numbed or stockpiled, or when you get caught up in a feeling and you act out of it in a way that's not lined up with your values. So that's what expansion is. Values are what you want your life and work to be about, like the big picture, like what matters most to me. Sometimes the value words that are encouraged are thinking about caring and contribution and connection. A lot of times people's value statements can fit into those three categories. And so you have to be clear about what you want to create in order to like be creating something intentional. And then the committed action is that your action actually is lined up with your values. And I often say that it's really important to be lined up with your values. And so if this is who I say I want to be, but this is how I'm acting, there's kind of a gap between my stated values and my behavior. And that gap fills up with a lot of unhelpful emotions like guilt and shame and regret. And so if I can live my life more lined up, then I get to have less of those kinds of unhelpful emotions. And so it's like when you open an aspirin bottle, sure, a lot easier to do when the arrows are lined up. And if those arrows aren't lined up, you can, do a lot like your teeth work, and it's hard to get access to that. These 6 skills are discussed in detail in a book called The Happiness Trap by an author named Russ Harris. And I really recommend that as a starter experience of like thinking about these 6 core concepts and starting to integrate them into your life. And so I very much encourage you to pick up a copy of The Happiness Trap. It's a white book with a yellow smiley face on a stick. It really talks a lot about the myths of happiness and about how we are innocently operating under this idea that we should only be having good emotions, everything should be fine all the time. And by trying to live like that, we're actually creating more stress for ourselves than need be. So my hope is that you'll take the opportunity to learn some of these core skills, and that you'll always be able to go back and reflect on your scores on the original paper. I would encourage you just to fill that sheet out, fold it up, put it in the back of the Happiness Trap book, read the book, hang out with the book, spend some time with it. If you have people on your work team who would maybe want to do a lunchtime book club, that could help you kind of hold yourself accountable to finishing the book. I would highly encourage you to finish this book, because the value part, which is really like helps you anchor into kind of who you want to be when the world's kind of going on crazy around us, like who do we want to be and how do we want to move forward? You got to know your values for that. That's in that back part of the book. So my hope is that you will get a copy of the book, do some reading, and help yourself go from psychologically rigid to more psychologically flexible. In the meantime, there's lots of classes and articles that you can get from our website that are designed to help you learn these skills. There's also a course being offered on campus called the Sustainable High Performance class, which talks a lot about these same skills. I kind of believe that we should care about being high-performing employees, and we should also care about our emotional and physical health and well-being. And the Sustainable High Performance class is really about the skills needed to be at the intersection of healthy and high-performing. Hope this video toolkit episode was helpful, and I am open to your feedback. Feel free to email me if you have questions or comments. Take care.